Welcome to the Local Exchange Podcast, where Northwest Ohio comes to talk. Real people, real conversations, right here in our community. This episode is proudly brought to you by Caliber Custom Clothiers, defining style beyond ordinary.
We are joined this week by Shawnee teacher, Shawnee basketball coach, Mark Triplett. Mark, thank you for coming.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
So we wanted to get you on before the basketball season starts. And I guess that sort of leads into my first question, which is sports seasons seem to last a lot longer. And for some kids, they don't ever end. So when does your guys' season really start? Like, how long have you been practicing? How's that work?
Yeah, so for us, it's right after Labor Day. We have a meeting, and we have a meeting right before Labor Day, actually, like the last Friday of August. And then they get that long weekend off, and then we start our workouts. We do Monday through Thursday. We usually go right after school. We're done by 4 o'clock every day. But we're going at it from Labor Day through, the season starts. It's been it's changed a few times over the years, but the last several years it's been week 10 of football or the first round of the playoffs is the first practice.
Okay.
So we get about 8 weeks of our kind of fall workouts. And then we're at it through the season. Whenever you get beat in tournament, you have to take a month off. And then we tend to start right back up 4 days a week there in the spring. So it's really a 10-month sport. It's unfortunate, I think. We've talked as coaches and even with other coaches of other sports, if a kid is a 3-sport athlete, if you go from the start of the season to the state tournament in basketball, baseball, football, it's like 387 days that kids are playing those sports, which...
Well, my math's not I'm not an expert at the calendar, but that doesn't seem logistically possible.
It's tough, and I think that's why you're seeing so many kids that, even two sports for a lot of kids right now is a lot. It's just the demands of it are so much, and it's unfortunate, I think, because you're losing your multi-sport athletes. But at the same time, for coaches, if you aren't doing things when other people are, you're getting yourself behind. And I played 3 sports in high school, and I've always encouraged our kids to play multiple sports. But, the ones I think that are really good, they feel like I have to focus more on this because this is what I ultimately want to do.
Right.
And if I don't do it, I'm getting myself behind. And it's an unfortunate, I think, trend that the world is going in. I think specialization of sports is not something that I think is necessarily great for kids. I think burnout happens in that regard a lot more with kids, but I think it's not changing. I mean, that's
you're jumping way ahead. I wanted to get into this because this is super important because we both have younger kids that play multiple sports. Absolutely. I will speak for my own. I believe yours play multiple sports. Mm-hmm. What age do you think, being a high school coach that has coached kids that have gone on to play at a higher level, mm-hmm. what age would you tell kids, okay, now's the time to focus on this? Like, you have potential in basketball. Mm-hmm. So give up the baseball because you're going to cost yourself a college scholarship, mm-hmm. for instance. Like, is that a 10th grade thing? Is it a 6th grade thing? When does that, for you, do you think that falls into play?
I don't ever tell a kid to not play. I think that as soon as I do it, I have a kid, let's say that he's a great basketball player and he's also a really good baseball player. He's also a really good football player. And as soon as basketball is his first sport and baseball and football is his second sport, and he quits those, then I know it's coming back my way.
Right. Some other coach is going to do the same.
Yeah, it's not something that I want kids to do. I don't want them to have to pick and choose. I want them to communicate. I know that you start seeing that with, some of the AAU stuff, and, the AAU tournaments are going on during baseball season, and I really want to be at AAU. That's my first love. So they get pulled in that direction a little bit when they get into that freshman and sophomore year, I think. College coaches, every college coach in recruiting that I've ever talked to has told me that they encourage kids to play multiple sports.
Okay.
I think it's something, you learn different things, competitiveness and being around teammates. We had 3 kids from the basketball team that went out and played football this year for the first time that ended up starting for them and having great seasons. And, I work directly with the football coach now. He's an intervention specialist in my room first period every day, and we have a really good working relationship. And we've talked a lot about encouraging kids to do those things.
Are you going to go on the record of taking responsibility for Shawnee making the playoffs this year because of those basketball kids?
But I think that Coach Wireman would tell you that those 3 guys playing was a big reason why they played.
It helps.
Yeah, I mean, you have the Barker kid he's a tank. I mean, he's a great kid. He's a great clubhouse locker room type of guy, and he goes out there and he gets to hit people without any repercussions of it. I mean, that's right up his alley. So I think that when you have coaches that are willing to work together and not try to drag kids into certain, you have to do this, you have to do that, we just kind of have stressed, we want you to communicate with us, and you need to be doing something. So if in the summer we have a basketball camp and you're not able to go because you're at a football camp, then so be it. At the end of the day, we're not getting extra wins for going and winning summer camp games. It's all about, developing rotations and, chemistry with teammates. So I don't like the idea of making kids pick and choose. I want my children, my son, my daughter to ultimately do what makes them happy. My son loves baseball. I'm not sure he will play basketball past, 5th or 6th grade at this point, but he's a 3rd grader. He doesn't need to make that call right now.
Right.
Specialization is not something that I think coaches should be, forcing on kids. If they go home and talk to their parents and they're talking to scouts and they say, this is something I want to pursue strongly, and they make that decision, so be it. But it's not something I think is good for kids to have somebody in their ear telling them they have to do this or that.
So I did some research today. John was going to join us, but got stuck at work. So I have to fill in as being the research guy. So you are, according to Max Preps, and I don't know how accurate this is, you're 14 wins away from being the all-time, or 14 from tying Jeff Heaston as all-time winningest coach in Shawnee history. So congratulations on that.
I appreciate it.
You play roughly 23, 24 games this year. If I was a gambling man, I would say your expectations are to hit that 14 wins this year. With the fact that your teams over the last, how long have you been a coach?
This is year 13.
Year 13. Did you start out at Shawnee?
Yeah.
So over your tenure at Shawnee, you've had a lot of winning teams, a very good record. Where do you draw experience in the regular season versus saving kids up for? Do you get into that same load management thing already in high school that they get fined for in the NBA for doing?
I think that, I'll go back. My first 2 years at Shawnee, I was a 7th grade basketball coach. Going into my 3rd year, Shawnee got a new coach, and I became the varsity assistant. After that, I became the head coach. I was 25 years old. I was gung-ho, ready to go. You hear different things from different people, and, he's not going to do this and he's not going to do that. And then you kind of get subconsciously in your own head about, nobody's going to outwork me. Nobody's going to do this. And I think when I first started, it was, we need to be in the gym for as much time as possible. And it wasn't even a we thing. It was me. I need to prove that I'm capable of doing this. I need to prove that myself that, nobody's going to outwork me, and that way people will silence themselves, so to speak. And it was me being a young coach. I think we would start pretty well, and then we would taper off. And it was a thing that I had to learn that, production in the gym isn't so much with how much time you're in there. It's what are you doing while you are in there.
Right.
And it became more of a faster pace, high intensity kind of condition through drills more than we condition, just get on the baseline type of thing. And it's about being productive while you're in the gym. So we've always kind of directed the kids that if we can practice hard and we can compete and get better here for 75 minutes, 90 minutes, then we'll be out of here at 4:15, 4:30 on an after-school practice when we start at 2:45. If we aren't being productive and we need to stay longer, then we will. But it was, I think for me, a learning experience that being in the gym from 2:30 to 5 o'clock doesn't mean that we actually got better that day. What did we do while we were in the gym? And then, if you are working really, really hard every day and still keep them in the gym for 2.5 hours, you're going to wear them out.
Right.
So we have kind of a routine that we do. Mondays during the season, especially when we get into the season, it's kind of a shooting and film day for us, and that takes some of the burden off the legs a little bit from double weekends that we almost always play Friday, Saturdays. And Tuesday we kind of hammer them pretty good. Wednesdays we do some med ball workouts that my assistant coach Berkey kind of takes the lead on those, and he's excellent at it. And kind of build that muscle back up throughout the season. Mondays and Wednesdays is, I think a lot of times, in the past, we would lift 4 days a week, and then the season got there and you lose all that mass because you stop lifting. So we kind of try to continue with that, and I think that's helped with the bodies and keeping them fresh. And our fall workouts, we do this sprint series thing. I think it's been really good for us that, keeping kids fresh and healthy, but it definitely is, we want them to go compete and we want them to work hard. So if we are going to play, 22 regular season games now, it always used to be 20 when, I was growing up, and then it became 22. And then nowadays you're playing up to 8 tournament games, and
right.
If the season goes as long as possible, you could play 29 or 30. And that's a lot of games. I mean, it is for kids, right. And short amount of stretch when they're also going to school and they're in charge of doing this and that. So, yeah, I think that you have to kind of be conscious of it. We try to, give them, a Saturday when we don't play. If you did well on a Friday and a good week of practice, Saturday off type thing. We're conscious of that, but we kind of stress to them when we're in the gym, we need to make sure that we're taking advantage of it and getting better.
Now, you mentioned Coach Berkey. So he was, when I was in high school, he was the coach for a couple of the years at least. How helpful is it having a former head coach still be on the staff and be involved in day-to-day practices, his experience? Because he played at a fairly high collegiate level, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
How helpful was that, certainly as a young coach for you?
Yeah, Nick came in after I'd been there for 3 years, and he started with the 7th grade. His son, Jaron, older son, was coming into the 7th grade, and he was a 7th and 8th grade coach. And then when Jaron came up as a freshman, Nick became the varsity assistant, and he's been there since. Cannot say enough good things about that man. We kind of joke about, our personalities. We're very different personalities. I am, a lot more, if there's a missed call in the first quarter, like I want that call, and he has to kind of
those of us in the stands have noticed. Yeah, we've noticed.
I believe that. But we mesh really well together. We both have very common interests. We want the best for our kids, and I think that our working relationship has been excellent. He's been a great coach with us, but he's also a really good friend of mine, and he's a guy that I trust. I know when he speaks, whether I agree with him or not, I know it's coming from the right place. He has 6 years experience as the head coach at the exact same school that we're at now. He was the head coach when I graduated, in high school, and from St. Mary's, and played against him. So he is a father figure for those kids. He's got 2 kids on the team that he is their father, but a fatherly figure. He coached a lot of those guys when they were growing up. He has tremendous respect from them. So he's been a tremendous asset, and a guy that I genuinely trust. And like I said, you don't only see eye to eye with people, but when they're talking that they're wanting the best for the kids, just like I am.
Now, you and I have coached some teams together, and I'm curious how you handle Coach Berkey coaching his kids, because from experience, I am infinitely harder on my own children, to a fault. And I don't want to cast dispersions here, but you probably are too. Mm-hmm. On your own, how do you keep him in check? He's got 2 kids that are pretty good, to put it mildly. Mm-hmm. They'd probably beat me in a game of one-on-one. So how do you keep him in line with, he has the experience of being a head coach, but is also maybe pushing them too hard because he's their dad, but is also very good at basketball and knows what he's talking about. How do you find that line? Do you trust him to find that line?
Yeah, I think that Nick is, a lot of times people, and I think I'm guilty of this with my own son, you have a little bit of blinders for your kid, and you tend to, in a basketball game, a baseball game, you kind of focus, and Nick's really good about not doing that. He has two boys that are with us right now that are very different personalities. Beck has very similar personality to me. He is highly competitive in everything that he does. Every drill and practice, he wants to win. If it's a shooting drill, whatever it is, he is vocal. Trev is more, laid back personality. So those two on the court, are, they bicker at each other and stuff. And Nick is good about challenging his kids, just like he does everybody else, challenging them to be, the best versions of themselves each day. It's, I guess, convenient that his kids are really good. It's not like I'm having to pick favorites and, it's the coaches. Like,
right.
Holy cow, anybody with eyes knows that Beck and Trev are going to be on the floor. They're really, really good. And I think that he balances that really well as a coach and a dad. He'll come vent some things to me at times, but he's good about holding most of that in until a time when maybe it's more suitable to say some things. But I think Nick's just really good about keeping composure and making sure that he's making decisions not as a dad but as a coach.
So what would you say is the high school kids seem to be they're very different than I think when you and I were in high school, and even more so when an older generations of coaches were in high school. What are some of the biggest challenges coaching high schoolers today with social media, the convenience of the internet, the convenience of, especially with having some very good players that you've had over the last 13 years? What challenges are there in keeping kids focused on academics and schoolwork, especially if they're good enough to play at a higher level?
Yeah. There's a lot. I mean, we do grade checks every Tuesday all throughout the course of the year. So I'm not just keeping up on those during the season. Like, if you aren't keeping up with your grades in first quarter, it may be fall, but it's going to impact us.
Right.
So I'm sending out, I'm a big communicator with them. Like, if you're late to school, if you have an appointment, like, I need to know about it. I shouldn't have to read the announcements to know what's going on. Like, communicate with me. They're good about, now that they know, like, I'm checking grades all the time. If they missed a test because they had an appointment, they'll like, Coach, my grade is this because I missed this. It's going to go up, I promise. Right. So I think that aspect of it, the grades, is a communication thing between, me and them. They know that this is what's acceptable. They're going to run in practice if the grades reach lower than, there's certain things that we just had to grade check today and had to run for things. So that part of it kind of keeps them accountable. We preach, be reliable, be dependable, be accountable. I think that same thing in the classroom, having a rapport with teachers. If kids are acting up, I'm going to know about it, and then they're going to hear about it.
Right. It's helpful you being
absolutely
not in the building, but across the street.
And Nick's in the high school. And then I have an 8th grade coach who's in the high school, so that's excellent, because we have a staff who has been with me now for, I think every single one of our coaches has been there at least 6 years. And so they've had everybody in our program, seniors down, has had one of those coaches at times. So anybody can say anything to them, and they know it comes from a place of caring about them because they've all had them before. Social media is poison. It's poison. And they
to put it mildly. Right?
They're not going to stay away from it.
Right.
We preach stay humble and stay hungry. And as soon as you start reading everything on the internet that says how good you are, then it's poison, and it's going to, impact you in a negative way. And as soon as you, read everything about how bad you are, then, I think that it can also go south for you. I like to use things that other people have said as a motivational thing. I don't want our kids, I say stay off that stuff. If you see this, put it in your back pocket and save it for a rainy day, but it's not something that we're going to try to get ourselves caught up in. I know it's not going away. I know that social media is out there. I know that the kids are doing, Snapchats and things that I don't know about. But if I see things, then we hold them accountable in that regard. And I know it's something that I don't particularly enjoy about it. I wish that stuff would go away, but it's not going anywhere.
So I don't think that a lot of people necessarily understand that these are still kids. Most of your team is legally under 18. Mm-hmm. If you have kids that are 18, they're just 18. Mm-hmm. How tough is it, especially for kids that are very good, to keep them in line with the philosophies that you're trying to preach as a coach? Have you been fortunate and kids are okay? Have you had kids that are in one ear out the other? I'm always amazed by how, and having coached, I've not coached a high school team, but coaching children sometimes is more difficult. Like the different ways in which you have to adjust to coach different kids. Do you know that's like, how quick can you identify this kid needs pushed more, this kid I should not push more? How quickly can you identify that as a coach?
Yeah, I think, when I first started, I was 25, and the program was in not a very good place. And I didn't know a lot of the, juniors and seniors because I didn't have them in middle school. I got to know some of them as a varsity assistant, the prior year, but I didn't have the connection and rapport with them as much. You're there for a while. You start seeing these kids in middle school. You're developing relationships with them in class. You're going to their 7th and 8th grade games. You get to talk to them as people more than as basketball players. And I think the biggest thing for me has been building relationships. When kids know that you care about them and not the basketball player, then they're going to work for you.
Right.
And at this point, 13 years in, the standard is kind of the standard. And that dependable, reliable, accountable thing is something that we talk about, but also our leaders and our captains have been in our program. They see, so to speak, that when you put the work in, there's rewards that come with that, and they hold each other accountable. So I heard Greg Popovich say before that the teams that he gets the most credit for are his easiest jobs.
Right. Because
the ones that hold each other accountable, the ones that push each other daily, I don't have to do very much, and they're going to go do the right things because that's what the standard is here. And for us, that's we have really good kids. Have we had a few kids over the years? Sure, but we have overall really good kids, competitive kids that want to do well, and even when they don't admit that they like the fall workouts and they like waking up, like winning is fun.
Right.
And if you want to be successful in life and anything you do, you have to be willing to put the work in.
There is nothing more fun than winning.
Exactly right. And it's something that the only way you are going to have success in anything you do in life is if you're willing to put in the work for it. And I think that, throughout the last 13 years, we've been blessed with good kids who work hard, and who ultimately, at the end of the day, winning is fun to them. So they're going to do the things it takes to win.
So I think a lot of people are like a step away from, they might see you on the sidelines and they understand that these are kids in high school, but I don't think that a lot of people understand how these are kids that still live with their parents every day. They're still dealing with, they're still kids, mm-hmm. and their parents are still very much involved in their lives, as they should be. Do you ever have issues with some parent being like, oh, hey, Johnny's way better. Johnny should get more playing time. Like, you assume in the NBA, nobody's calling up Greg Popovich going, hey, coach, how come my kid didn't get in last night? And you assume in college that's not really a thing either. But in high school, like, I can tell you it's still very much a thing in 6th, 7th, 8th grade. Is it still a thing, or has the track record of winning sort of squashed any of that in the background?
We have a parent meeting every year, and I always say to them that ultimately we can put 5 guys on the floor. We want it to be as competitive as possible every single day. We want guys to compete. We want guys to work. But I'm still only going to be able to put 5 guys on the floor. And my thing has always been to not judge me by a 32-minute basketball game, but judge me based off of the relationship I have with your kid off the court. So have I had angry parents? Yeah. And will I continue to have angry parents? Yeah. I'm never going to be able to please everybody. I know that. But at the end of the day, I trust, not just myself that I'm not necessarily doing everything the right way, but I'm doing what I think is best for the team. And I have conversations with our coaches who see those kids in practice every single day, and we collectively are making decisions that we feel are in the best interest of the team. So at least even when they're angry, I can look them in the face and say, listen, this is what is in the best interest of all of us as coaches, thinking how we're going to win basketball games. Is that always going to please people? No. I've had teams that are bad, and Johnny's playing 32 minutes, and they're happy. And we have teams, we went undefeated one year, and I had people that weren't happy with me because so-and-so isn't getting enough time. So, if you focus on that side of it, like how do I start pleasing everybody, then good luck. And that's life in general. Like if the bottom line is that you want to make people happy, then you're going to disappoint a lot of people. And more importantly, you'll disappoint yourself, I think. But you're going to have it. And it's just something that I think more times than not, parents, they want their kids to do well, but they are usually smart enough to see at the high school level that this kid is on the floor for this reason, and I can see that with my eyes when I watch the game.
So you talked about the program being in sort of disarray when you started. How involved are you and the other coaches? When do you start getting involved with, is it Little Indians basketball in the 3rd grade? Is it 6th grade? Is it 7th grade? When do you start having a pulse on, hey, this is what's going on at these levels below me, and this is what I'd like you to be doing, so that way by the time they get to me, we've covered these things and I'm not teaching them this. They've learned this. What level is, do you think is the right level for your involvement?
Ideally 3rd grade. And I've been blessed in the fact that I've had coaches in our program that have also done the lower levels because they've had kids that are spread out age-wise, and it's worked out, that, okay, Nick's down there doing the lower stuff, and then it turned into Eric Croyle, who's our 8th grade coach, and, they've not only seen what we're doing at the middle school, high school level, but they also do those things at the lower levels, and we kind of have asked them to build on, okay, they did this in 3rd grade. That's our core stuff. And then we're going to add on to it in 4th grade. We're going to add a little bit more in 5th grade. And by the time they get to 7th grade, I pretty much have always just given my coaches everything we do, our entire binder, and asked them to, do things in there. I want them to have some creativity, so I don't want to say you have to do this, this, and this because kids are different. You might have a lineup that's bigger and you might have a lineup that's quicker. So, as long as we're doing things terminology wise that when I say a play, they need to know what that is. And they're not looking at me like, what the heck are you talking about? Right. Defensive calls need to be the same from 7th grade on, and our coaches have been excellent about that. But I know a huge part of our success has been the continuity of our coaches. They're teaching the same message at the lower levels that we're teaching at the high school levels. So when we go from 7th to 8th grade and 8th to 9th and 9th to JV and so on, they're getting the same stuff. The things that we as coaches are saying are the same. You might have slight variations. We just adjusting a couple things right now based off of personnel. But the base of your stuff is the same, and they're getting that from 3rd grade on.
Well, and having, I see it with the soccer program a lot. It turns out, shockingly, winning makes kids want to get involved in a program. When they see the basketball team make it to the playoffs, go win games in the playoffs, make it to state tournaments, they see how cool that is. They want to be down there. I think this year for the football team, them getting to the playoffs will be huge for their numbers next year. And so, like, one thing that I've loved is, like, I see the high school players, they help referee those 3rd and 4th grade games. They seem to be very involved in the program, which helps, like you would say, build into a culture of, hey, I want to be like this kid when I grow up. And so what do you think a skill is? Because obviously kids' bodies changed. You know, you could be slow and terrible shooter, but you might grow 5 feet over the course of a year. What is a skill that translates well that, like, if you've got a kid just getting into 3rd grade basketball, what skills should that 3rd grader be working on? Because
ball handling.
Just
holy cow.
Dribbling?
Dribble the ball, because look at, guys as they get older. You got Victor is 7'5" and handles the ball like a guard. And then you have guards but everybody in this day and age is skilled with the basketball in their hands. Jokic can't jump more than 2 inches, but he's the best player in the NBA because he's so skilled. And everybody wants to score. Everybody wants to shoot. They want to do this and that. But if you can handle the ball, that's something that it's a skill that is going to translate no matter how big you get, how small you stay. Get the ball in their hands, and we start doing that with kids. Even in Upwards last year, I don't know how, but I somehow ended up helping out with coaching my son's team in that regard, and that was the biggest thing for us, is just getting the kids comfortable with the ball and just coming to jump stops and doing things the right way instead of trying to shoot the ball down from their hip from half court and heave up threes all game long. So, and like you said, with our older kids, we tell them all the time, you never know who's watching, and you do. You have 8-year-old eyes on you that are watching you. And I remember this as a kid. Mark Ashman was 6'10", went to St. Mary's. He was one of my sister Janelle's best friends growing up, graduated together, went on to Dayton, was a 4-year starter for UD. And he would come in our house, and I would look at this guy like it was Michael Jordan walking in our house. Right. And, I've seen kids get, choked up when they see Beckett Berkey and Trevick Berkey and George Mangus and Tyson Elwer. And, those kids, they have no idea the impact that they actually have on those young kids. So when they can get to Little Indians and, our kids camp that we do in the summer, and they have their own team and they're on one of those guys' teams, like, it's the coolest thing in the world for them. And I think that those guys, they're kids themselves. They don't understand how impactful they can be, but holy cow, their ability to connect to those young people and get them to understand, the standards that we have in place and do things the right way. And, that's been really, really important for us.
So, when we, and I don't know that you know an answer to this question, but I'm going to ask it anyways. The state seems to keep changing the rule on NIL for high schoolers. Obviously, we all know the NIL deal for college, and it's maybe gotten a little out of hand. It quickly devolved into a free-for-all. What is your takeaway? Not necessarily on, like, hey, what are the rules of it, but what is your feelings on, kids being paid in high school now, or being given opportunities for sponsorships and things like that?
It's really tough. I've always been the belief that I don't want to think for someone else's pocketbook. It's not my job to think of what you can do with your money and how much money should this person make. I think it's awkward when you have collegiate athletes who are making more than their coaches. It's like, the NBA level, is LeBron running the team or is the coach running the team?
Right.
And we all know the answer to that because he's gone through like 9 coaches.
Right.
So it's one of those things at the high school level. Do I want kids to have opportunities? Sure. But when we start, these are kids, they're 15, 16, 17, 18 years old, and you're going to drive my car. You're going to, get this, you're going to get that. You're going to get, what are we doing? Is it clothing? Is it money we're giving them? Is it cars we're giving them? I think there's different layers to that, but you just start paying these people $1 million to wear their, Nike shirt. Like, I don't know where it stops. I don't think it's going anywhere. I think it's going to get, progressively more and more involved in our world. And I think it's one of those things that, we focus a lot with the kids on control the controllables. And there's only so much stuff that you have control over. I think this is one of those things that's kind of beyond my control.
Well, but I think it's not necessarily going to be beyond your control because I think you're probably going to have parents. Like, I can tell you, if I had a kid on your team all of a sudden I got a call from some car dealership being like, hey, if this kid just keeps talking about how great Matt's Car Emporium is, I'm going to give him a car I'm going to give him a leased car, let him drive around. I would probably go to the coach, and you're going to have to become the expert on, hey, this is how we navigate that. Have you had conversations with other coaches, with athletic directors?
Yeah, athletic directors for sure. And it's something that, he's talked to me a lot about because he gets emails from the state and he keeps me in the loop on things. I feel like the latest, that had the kid going to Ohio State from Huber Heights, and it's kind of been, in flux for a while now. I keep waiting on an additional update that hasn't happened. But, you're right to the extent of we are going to have a say in it. People they're not just going to come walk in the gym and start, giving things. They're going to communicate with the school and figure things out. I'm never going to, if I was 17 years old and someone walked in the gym and they're going to offer me a car to
Right.
wear their T-shirt, like whatever
Right.
it is, I'm not going to ever take that away from a kid. But I think that there are definite conversations that would need to be had in regards to the kids need to understand they're still very much a part of a team. They may individually excel and get opportunities because of their individual talents, but this is not tennis. This is a team sport.
Right.
And, I think that there are positives that can come from NIL. I've seen people take their, NIL dollars and do things for the team. And it becomes something that you can very much keep camaraderie amongst yourselves. But anytime it becomes one guy is above everybody else in a team sport, it doesn't usually work out very well.
Right. Well, and like I said, it's such a young age. No kid is, let's just be real, 17, 16, 18-year-old kids make dumb decisions. And it is, like, I always go back to, where do you draw the line? It's easy to draw the line on a kid who's now in college. He's 18. He can be paid. It's something, because if you can all of a sudden do it as a minor, why can't we have 8th graders then doing it? Why can't one of my companies pay some kid to become a member of my travel baseball team?
Yeah.
And start recruiting that way. If we're opening it up to people under the age of 18, it turns probably dark pretty quick.
Yeah, and I think that's what ADs especially and coaches are. Where do you draw the line? Where is this starting? Where is it stopping? When are they like that? There's so much uncertainty that they, this kid sued and, we can't take opportunities away from them. That's not right. But where do you draw the line at?
Well, and like there's freak athletes at every age. I mean, people were talking about LeBron from the time he was in the 5th grade.
Yeah.
Like, LeBron would have gotten NIL money.
Absolutely.
5-year-old LeBron would have done it. So especially with basketball, it seems like kids stand out in basketball sooner than other sports. I don't know if it's because there is an individual aspect to it, or if it's because it's just such a look. If you're a foot taller and can jump through the ceiling, you're gonna beat other kids.
Yes.
But it turns Like I said, it can sour very quickly, and I don't know what the ruling's going to end up being, but I certainly do not envy those of you that are going to have to navigate that, because it's going to be complicated.
Yeah,
I feel like.
I agree. It's not going to be something that I think is going to be a stress-free thing for ADs and coaches.
Speaking of ADs, and logistics of a basketball team, do you worry with there's always funding issues at almost every school, certainly every public school. Do you ever worry about funding issues for the basketball program? How early are those communicated with you? Have you ever had conversations where they're like, hey, we can't allow you to take a bus to Columbus for a basketball game? And if so, is there anything that can be done about those issues?
Our athletic director, and I've had two since I've been at Shawnee, we have every sport season. They'll have a fall, then they have a winter, and then they have a spring head coaches meeting. And at those meetings, the ADs do a really good job of kind of expressing where we're at. Some years it's better than others. But they kind of give you an idea that, hey, you're going to have your budget for this, and this, but don't come asking for that, and that. And we also all have our own, there's a boosters, a Shawnee Athletic Boosters, that's for all sports. And that's it's been great over years at times. It's been, less involvement from parents at times. I think it's picking back up now. And the boosters help out with some of that stuff too, separately from the athletic office. And then you also have your own individual sport. We have a basketball fund.
Right. So,
what a lot of times if there are issues going on, and we've been blessed, we've never had pay to play, we've always been able to, get support and pay for officials and, this and that. Couple times where the basketball program has to pay for a bus if you're going in the summer to such and such and you need a bus, like it's coming out of yours instead of the athletic fund.
Right.
But that's about it. But from the standpoint of, okay, I want something and the athletic department can't give it to us, that they have us get approved fundraisers, and you can go fund. You want new uniforms and we can't give them to you right now, go fund them. Parents associations, a lot of sports have those, and the parents, they want the best for their kids. So they do things, to, raise money and then, give the kids meals before league games and have meals for them on the buses when they're going places. And, there's always kind of some wiggle room there, even if it doesn't directly come from the athletic department themselves. The communication is there for us as coaches to know, like, okay, this is what we're going to need or we want, and they're willing to help us with this and that or figure out a way to do it yourself.
So if you were given an unlimited budget for one single thing, what would be the most helpful to the Shawnee basketball program, money not being an issue?
Mm-hmm. It's hard because right now the league does a film thing we all have to do. It's excellent. And that's a huge part of, scouting is going through that stuff. Have to have that. We have a really nice shooting gun that is really nice for kids. The meals are, the kids love the meals. Those are paid for. There's not something like for us right now that I'm thinking like, holy cow, I wish we had money for that, because we've kind of over 13 years figured out what we need and what we like and found ways to get it over time. There are a lot of really neat technology things that, Division I schools and NBA, like those type of places have. And if you had an unlimited budget, then we're going to get them.
Right.
But from a high school standpoint and, the things that we need to be successful and have success, we have those things. If I had an unlimited budget, there would be some fun tools that we would be using that we don't have. but it's nothing that I think is like, preventing us from being successful.
So not a new gym, not a bigger
I would
gym.
definitely have a new school. If we had unlimited funds at Shawnee, then we would have a new middle school and a new high school, like as soon as possible.
To include a new gym?
Absolutely.
Right. Okay.
As much as I love Lappin, and I love Lappin, it's something that that's something that's been very prideful for our kids. Like, this is our gym. We come in here, we sweat, we bleed here, we work here. People don't come into Lappin and outwork us. It's a big pride thing for us. We would like a Lappin the second is what would be
right.
nice.
Some small upgrades.
Yes.
So one thing that John wanted to make sure that he asked, so I will ask on his behalf, is how real is home court advantage in basketball? Like in football, the fans are pretty far away. There's just a lot of space, and the field's big. Basketball, certainly you go into some of these smaller schools in the area, you're shoved in there pretty good. How big of an advantage is there to be at home for a team?
I think it's huge. One of our goals every year is protecting Lappin, and that it's for us a huge pride thing. Like, you're just not coming into Lappin and not working us. Like, that's not on our bingo card. We're not letting that happen. You go to Delphi St. John's, they're on top of you. The
fans are on top of each other.
Yes, they are. Right. And it's one of those places that if there's a call that goes against the Blue Jays, you don't have a coach and the players mad at you. You have 1,600 people screaming.
Right.
And that's a very intimidating thing for somebody who's there to make $80.
Right.
And, I'm getting yelled at a lot more when I go, that's a real thing. And you go to Ottawa Glandorf, think about the teams they've had over the years. And I think, first of all, the fans come out for the product you have on the floor.
Right.
If you put a good product on the floor, you're going to have people show up. And when you have people show up in your home gym, that it's typically 80-20-ish on fans, 80% of the people screaming for you, cheering you on. I think our kids, they tend to play a little harder when the gym's packed than they do going to, an empty gym on a Tuesday night. That's just the reality of it. And when that extra motivation comes from your fan base and they're getting on the other team for this and that, that's a pressure thing for kids that some of them don't handle it well when everybody's screaming at you. There's a free throw late in the game and your legs are already tired and you're mentally already tired. And now I have 2,000 people yelling my name, and sometimes they're not yelling nice things. I think that's a real advantage. And that's why, you look at our home record over the last several years has been pretty daggone good. And I don't think that's an accident.
Right. Where, so one thing that I wanted to make sure I asked you was about the COVID year. So maybe a sore subject for some people, but what would that have been, the 1920 season, 2019-2020 season? You guys were like 24-0, 25-0, something like that. Walk me through how you found out that they were canceling the rest of the tournament, when you found out. Were you involved in any of those discussions? How did that all sort of play out?
Yeah, it's a vivid, painful memory. We were 25-0. We won our 25th game at Ohio Northern. Played a really good Defiance team. Played one of our best games of the season, and just played really, really, really well. Mr. Owen and I, our athletic director, go to BG for the regional meeting that Sunday. There are random speculation, rumors about this COVID stuff that's going on. At the time, I knew very little about it. This is 4 days before, the world shut down.
Right.
We went through that whole meeting. Every team that's going to play at BG, it was 4 different divisions that are playing there. All their coaches are there. They're passing out information. On Monday, the Division I schools played their game in front of a full crowd. Monday night, AD calls. They're doing limited audience on the Tuesday and Wednesday and Thursday games now. They're going to give each kid 4 tickets. Cheerleaders, players each get 4 tickets. Coaches will get a couple of tickets each as well. They're going to limit it to essentially 100 per school. So we're going from potentially playing in front of, we were just there the year before, and it was amazing crowds. And now we're going to play in front of about 200 people in a regional game. And fill out these forms. You had to get every single kid, who their people are. And if so-and-so's not using all 4 of theirs, then we're putting another name. Like, we're getting this as many people as we can in there. And we have had amazing crowds all year long. We have a lot of people that want to watch. Right. And Tuesday they play limited crowd. Wednesday they play limited crowd. Thursday I turn in this form the morning of. They have to send it in by noon that day. And these are the people that are essentially on a pass list. And we're playing. The bus is leaving. We're going down there. The bus is supposed to leave, I think, at like 3:15 that day. We're playing at 6. First game that night of 2. And I went in the athletic office that morning, and Steve Owen says to me, if I see you again before BG tonight, it's not going to be a good thing. And I said, I better not see you then. Right. And about 2:15, the superintendent and Steve knock on my door, and I already knew, and I just said, I just basically closed the door and said, I don't want to hear it. And, have a meeting. We have 3 seniors, and right then I knew that we were done. It was at the time a 3-week shutdown is what they did to us. But you go in that meeting after school, and we're talking to our team about a game that I now know is not going to happen on a season that we're 25-0. And 3 seniors on that team that I know are never getting to put that uniform on again. It was the most special team that I'd ever had. An emotional time with, things going on with my family, with my mom. Basketball was a huge, kind of rally cry for us. And I always said, and I'm an English teacher, I said, if I had a student write a creative writing assignment and this is what they made up, where the world shut down because of this, like I said, it would have been too unreal for a creative writing 8th grader to write. And that was the world we lived in. One of the more, unbelievable things I think that our world has ever seen. And, looking back, I think that, they did a lot of things because there was so much fear that they probably wouldn't do again. But a really, really special season that just unfortunately didn't get to finish.
Well, on a happier note, we're hoping for another special season this year. Are there any games, and I know you'll give me the coach's answer of, every game's the most important game, and I'm only looking at the next game. But are there any games, you don't have to admit which ones, just like asking your 5 favorite child. Are there games that you have circled every year because you know the caliber of team you go against?
I think our league games are always the most important because at the end of the day, you want to win the Western Buckeye League. But, kids are human. Like, the Tip-Off Classic is one of the bigger things in the area. You got 2,500 people watching you. Everybody's home for the holidays. It's, I remember when we played a game at Sidney Lehman, first game, and you got 300 people there, and it's not a real overly exciting first type of game. So, the tip-off is something our kids get very excited for. It's a very unique thing for high school basketball to start like that. It's important to them. They got a tip-off banquet. They get to go eat a nice meal and have all 4 teams in there staring at each other, listening to each other.
Do those count towards your record, or are those scrimmage games?
They are not so there's league teams there. So if we played, Bath or Elida, it wouldn't count in the league record, but it counts to your overall record. So those are your first 2 games of every season.
Right.
Out of your 22. So 2 at tip-off. You got 9 league games. There's 11 right there. And we're Shawnee, so there's rivals. you got your rivals in Lima.
Right.
You know, Elida's a rival, Bass a rival. And then when you play competitive games with people like Ottawa Glandorf over the years, big time rival. And then you have your teams that are really good in the area, the Delphos St. John's, the Lima Seniors. You know, they become giant rival games because the fans show up for them. So now all of a sudden you got 2,000 people watching a high school basketball game. It's easy to get excited for them. So those are the ones that, you know, our kids get, you know, most up for. I am the coach, and I say that the most important one is the next game, because if you don't do well in that game, then the next one is less important anyway. But I'm also not naive enough to not think that these kids who are 15, 16, 17, 18 years old, you know, don't have certain ones that they're circling on their calendars.
So what is sort of to wrap this up here, what is something that you'd like to share with the community? What is something that the community could do to be more helpful? What would be your message to the community for this upcoming year?
Show up for us. I mean, the kids they work so hard, and it's so much of what you see is the 28-minute JV game and the 32-minute varsity game. But kind of like you were asking earlier, these guys have been getting after it since Labor Day. They've been going for 4 days a week. We've been challenging them in the classroom, challenging them to be, you know, leaders there on and off the court. It's a huge time commitment. And I think that's a big part of, you know, their own lives is working hard every single day to get better. And as I said, when people are there, they give you a little bit more juice.
Right.
And, you know, I think over the years, you know, Shawnee's crowd has been excellent. They've been very supportive, you know, of our boys, of me, and I'm very, very appreciative of that. I would say I want Lappin to be loud. I want it to be loud. I want it to be a really, really difficult place for other teams to play. You know, I'm also, you know, a fan of, you know, professional sports, and I enjoy when I'm a Steelers fan. I know that's a sore subject.
Let's not talk about that.
But like when the Steelers go play on the road and it feels like a game is in Pittsburgh, like that's a pretty cool thing. So when we go somewhere else and there's a lot of people wearing Shawnee clad, like that's also a pretty cool feeling. So, you know, when I say show up, like getting to the away games as well and supporting our kids. And I think it's something that they just tend to give a little bit more juice when there's extra people in the crowd.
There's feet in the seats. Well, Coach, I appreciate your time. We wish you the best this upcoming year. Tip-Off Classic starts, next weekend?
Yeah, next Friday, day after Thanksgiving. Hard to believe.
Comes quicker every year. That could just be my age. Well, we appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Hey, thank you very much for having me.